Hey guys, my name is Merrick, and I'm going to give you guys a quick rundown on how to play co-op or 3ve with your friends, and basically what you should expect if you haven't played co-op games in StarCraft or other RTSs before. So, firstly, how do you play a 3ve game with your friends? Because if you go to the co-op, there's just a play button. Well, firstly, the way you actually play with your friends is you go to the custom lobby, you create a game, the map you're looking for is Wreak Havoc, and you can make it a private lobby. Then you want to copy paste the ID that pops up, and when your friends they'll hit the join by ID button down there, and you just copy paste and send this to them on Discord or something else like that, and it'll throw them into the lobby. But for now, because I'm just trying to show things, I'm going to jump into this solo for a moment on normal, and I'm going to explain a little bit about how this goes. I'm going to give you very quickly the basics of Stormgate in case you haven't played an RTS before, and then I'm going to jump into games that I actually played, and I'm going to do a voiceover because I was focused on playing, and explain more things about what to actually expect and how it's going to look, both for the hero Blockade and for the hero Moloch. So let's get into it. So if you start a game on tutorial difficulty, the first thing it's going to do, it's going to have you mess with your hero and your first unit, basically show you the very basics of how to make a unit and how to move stuff around. I'm going to assume you've played a little bit of that and have the general idea of what you're doing. I'm going to give you some builds, but I'm not going to walk you through making units and all the things that are very generic and basic to the game. I will say, though, the things you should be aware of compared to other RTSs, specifically StarCraft, is whereas StarCraft you have to macro all of your buildings into hotkeys, the way Stormgate has it set up is you can actually just click on these 4-5 buttons down here, or press Q, W, E, and R to swap between them, and they will select all of your buildings, all of your units, and all that such. So if you use the build structures here, and you want to build something, it will automatically pull a Bob off the line to make it, and it'll automatically rally it back. This is much simpler and much easier for getting into the game, but when you have a lot of things going on and at higher level play, it is worth noting that it does not always pick the closest worker. So it is going to be a good habit to pick the worker and get used to pressing Z to build things if you want something built very quickly and very close to where you want it to be. Similarly, when you make a production structure, like a barracks being your first thing, once you press W, it will select all of your barracks and allow you to pick your units from there. The same thing goes for Infernal, but their mechanic is a little bit different. If you were to have a barracks building, this is also a very important thing because it could be very easy to get confused. Once you build a barracks and have that finish, you can queue up more than one unit. This is standard for most RTSs where you can queue up units in a building to make sure that you don't miss a production cycle. The downside of this is that you are spending money that you could be spending elsewhere, and as you get better at the game and get to higher levels and get more experienced, it'll become more apparent why that is not always a good thing to do. So, for example, something to be aware of is here, I have a guardsman queued up through this new menu that automatically goes to this barracks without me ever selecting it, but I have a second one queued up and a third one queued up. Why don't these automatically roll over here? That's just not how the game works, and it's important to know that because you could very easily queue up a bunch of things and expect them to show up, and they won't actually show up. That's a very basic thing that I felt was very important to mention, specifically very early. If you've never played an RTS before, the very basics are you have Luminite as your primary resource to spend on basic units. You have the Ethereum, which is this here, and you use that to buy advanced units and upgrades, and your supply is how many units your base can sustain. For Infernal, you have to build meat farms to get your supply. For for Moloch or Infernal, you have to build meat farms. For Blockade or Vanguard, you have to build habitats. That's basically what I wanted to jump into and give you the very basics of the game itself. I'm going to now jump into some games that I've played. I'm going to do a voiceover and explain the general what to expect from this, and there will be separate videos that you can look up for the specifics on Blockade and Moloch themselves. I will explain some basic openings for both loadouts, or for both heroes though, don't worry. So, the co-op or 3ve mode is essentially what you would expect from a standard RTS campaign mission. You have an army, and you have an objective. But what makes it different is the co-op, so you have two other players with you, each with their own hero and armies. The overall goal is to kill the Ion Bolt, which is in the enemy's base. You can see it on the minimap. It is their bright red castle. But if that were all, just make an army and kill one building, it would be pretty boring, wouldn't it? So, there's going to be two other things you have to contend with. The enemy will have external bases marked by a red tower that will occasionally spawn waves of enemies that will try to push your base. These waves are marked by a skull, they can come from any of the bases, and they will get stronger as the game goes on. The amount of attacks that spawn at a single time are dictated by the difficulty that you are playing on, with 1 at beginner all the way up to 4 at brutal. They will also affect how many units are in each wave, but regardless, the waves will get stronger as the game progresses and more waves are sent at you. And there are convoys that come from the off edges of the map that will travel to the ion bolt. If you miss any of these, it will launch a large artillery at all 3 of your bases, which will deal a bunch of damage and could potentially set you back a bit. If you miss 3 convoys, the AoE artillery will continue until your base is destroyed, basically losing you the game. Whether you're just getting your footing or trying to play a higher difficulty, there's no shame and it is highly recommended to build some static defense at the entrance to your base, especially where these attack waves are going to be spawning. For blockade, you'd want to make sentry posts and put a guardsman inside of it. The sentry post can attack on its own, but it is a very weak attack that is much stronger if you put a guardsman inside of the building. For Moloch, your static defense options are the meat farm, which is actually also your supply unit. It will spawn fellhogs that will automatically melee things nearby. They spawn on a 20-second timer. And the Shroud Stone, which is a longer range static defense option that will also attack things that fly. You can also build your static defense in a more offensive manner. You can build static defense out anywhere on the map, not just in your base, so you can actually use it to defend certain areas if that's where you wanted to be. However, the Convoy has a specific mechanic where it will push units out of the way, and things that it cannot push, like buildings, will just be destroyed instantly. So keep that in mind when you're placing your buildings. Keep them off the road and onto the side. The only other things to mention are there are camps of mobs that spawn around, resource, health, speed, and siege camps. Killing any of these, not just the resource camp, will grant you a certain amount of resource if you get the last hit, and they all have a specific effect. Speed camps will allow your mobs that step through it to go faster. The health camp will heal in an AoE for a duration. The resource camp just gives more resources. And then the siege camp spawns a specific catapult unit that will push the nearest enemy outpost, not their main ion bolt, and can be used to help you break those bases when you decide to attack them. The siege catapult minion cannot be controlled. It will automatically push the nearby enemy outpost. So if you're not ready to push the base yet, don't feel like you have to take the camp. And if you do want to take the camp for resources, don't feel like you have to throw your army away trying to save the mob once it runs its way straight into the enemy base. The only other thing to mention, before I give you guys these basic builds I talked about for co-op, is to mention that both Moloch and Blockade have unique hero abilities and global abilities. Global abilities run off of a resource that you can see in the top center of the screen, and they have different abilities and global abilities between the two of them that I will be going more into depth on in each of their respective videos. But for now, I'm going to give you a basic build order roughly for each of them, but I'm not going to exactly tell you what to build. You can experiment and have fun with that yourself. So first things first, regardless of what the faction is, you want to make sure that you're continually making workers until you get saturation at your bases. The Luminite mine, the big thing in the center, can hold 12 workers before it becomes oversaturated and you don't get any more benefit from it. The Therium, the more advanced resource, you want to have about 5 workers on at each base you have. Now, on every difficulty, including Brutal, if you are comfortable with microing while keeping up production, you can actually just take your starting hero and the unit they give you, and go begin to clear out the expansion area that is above your base, where you can then build a second command post or shrine and begin expanding to get a very big economy boost. But assuming you're not comfortable with that, with either faction, you want to just keep making workers. As Blockade, you want to make a habitat and a barracks, so that you can start making guardsmen and use those to go with your hero and clear out your natural expansion. As an Infernal, you want to make an Iron Vault and a Meat Farm. Iron Vault produces your units, and the Meat Farm gives you supply. As both factions, once you put these first structures down, or if you wait until after you expand, either way you would then want to start putting some units into the Therium mining, and then start deciding what you want to make from there. The W and E menus will have a bunch of your units, and you can mouse over them to see what buildings they require and what you need. Both armies have a lot of units locked behind upgrading one of your command bases, whether it be the command post or shrine, to tier 2, and that requires Therium to do so, which is part of the reason you need to make sure you're mining it to some extent early. You don't need a lot of workers on it, just a few will do. Once you get a bunch of workers at both bases, it will benefit you to make multiple of the same production building, that way you can make army faster and keep your money spent. That's about everything I've got for the 3VE co-op overview. I'm not going to tell you exactly how to play, exactly what to do, or exactly what you should be building. One of the best parts about RTS games is there's not generally one approach to the game that is objectively correct, and you can always be trying different things to figure out what you think works the best and what you have the most success with. The fun part is figuring it out yourself and enjoying yourself along the way. I made this video as a crash course for people joining the Steam NextFest, but it is important to remind everybody that this game is still in beta, so if you're finding this video later on, not everything is going to be precisely accurate. Things are going to be added and going to be changed, but this is a basic overview that should still have the broad strokes be applicable when people are trying to figure out what to do and how to enjoy the 3v mode if you've never played an RTS before, or at the very least what to expect. Let me know if I missed anything, let me know what you do like, let me know what you don't like, let me know what you think so I can improve my videos going forwards. Thank you guys for watching this far into the video. I hope you enjoy the Stormgate beta, and with any luck, I'll see you next time.